They say a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. It's funny how these words make it seem easy to start anything. It makes you think of the end goal and the first steps. But what it leaves out is everything that happens in between. You see, it never mentions how much resistance you will encounter. It fails to bring up how your own mind will become your worst enemy, and how even those closest to you will doubt you and want you to do something they see as better. I decided to pursue music when I was 5 years old. I saw my dad on stage for the first time, and it's all I ever wanted. My first obstacle was myself. I was shy and quiet. I was content sitting alone in a crowded room. Through grade school, I spent most of recess following around one of the adults supervising. I didn't naturally go find friends. I didn't naturally connect with peers. I had one friend in grade and middle school, and he, like me, was not very social. It was just how I was. It became easy to say that. That's just how I am. And I just leave it at that. Even in high school, when I did know more people and I had more friends, I spent most of my time as a loner. I didn't talk to many people, and I began to identify myself as that person who could survive without anyone. I didn't think I'd ever be or have that outgoing, charismatic personality you need to entertain. My second obstacle was the fact that I couldn't sing. It wasn't just bad. I was believed to be tone deaf and just not born with the gift. I remember many of my family saying that if I wanted a life in music, I'd better pick up an instrument and get good at it, because I would never be a singer. These were people that loved me. They were truly looking out for my interest and trying to guide me away from disappointment. My own father didn't really, or at least was hesitant about letting me get on stage to sing with him. But he would allow me to play bass, and you bet I jumped at it. I picked up guitar and even a little piano, but I couldn't get away from just wanting to sing. Music was my life. My freshman year in high school, I got my chance. I signed up for men's choir. This was the entryway into the school's music world as a singer. Anybody could sign up. There was no guidelines. My teacher was Mr. Southwick. Mr. Southwick was the first mentor I had outside of my family, and I trusted him with my dreams. He had a way of not only teaching music, but he taught about how it tied into life in the world we live in. Not only that, he was the same choir teacher that taught my father years ago in that same classroom. I immediately felt connected to him. As he spoke of my dad coming into his class and always being so attentive and all those little stories, I was drawn into the idea that he could help me gain my musical dreams. I worked my tail off that year. Did everything I thought humanly possible to improve myself and not let myself down. Week after week, month after month, I dedicated so much to beating my biggest weaknesses and just find a way to make it to my goals. The end of the school year, before you could sign up for concert choir, you had to audition the year prior to prove that you had the abilities needed to make the cut. I thought I'd be able to get in so I auditioned. Mr. Southwick came in, did a number of exercises. He found my lowest notes, he found my highest notes, And he had me sing different harmony parts and even had me sing some solo things based on music alone. He had me go through the whole process before I just waited. I waited in this plastic chair that wasn't designed for comfort. It was literally designed to keep your back straight for singing posture. I never really noticed how uncomfortable these chairs were until I was sitting there waiting for him to finish his assessment. Although I'm sure it was only a few minutes, I remember wondering if it was ever going to be done. Mr. Southwick came out after going over his notes and told me I didn't make the cut. I wasn't good enough once again. It was like reliving everything I already knew. I was never going to be a singer because I wasn't born with the gift. When he offered me a spot back in men's choir again the next year, I declined. I intended to give up completely. My sophomore year, I thought I'd be done with music. That lasted about a minute. I began to dig deeper into guitar and piano and found that I was able to learn little bits of most any instrument. I became like the, mediocre version of every instrument I could touch. I wasn't passionate about learning any of them, so I moved from instrument to instrument. But it was close enough to feed the hunger I had for music. I also dug deep into writing. I wrote short stories that were not really worth reading, but I enjoyed writing them. I wrote poetry that I hid from the world because I felt it wasn't good, but mainly I wanted to learn how to write songs. I got this crazy idea that if I filled this notebook, so I filled this notebook with every lyric to every song that I liked, mostly Garth Brooks at the time. I had them all numbered, and as I wrote them, I analyzed the rhyme patterns and chord structures. I didn't have the greatest ear, but with the guitar and other instruments I was touching, I was able to figure out most of the chord structures. I wanted to know how my favorite songs were put together. The whole time, I still wanted to sing. I couldn't give it up. I ended up going to the music store and saw an old simple system that was not so much in rough shape. It was actually fairly new for what it was. And it was just a good little starter set. And I told my dad about it, and he came in to look at it, and I wanted to know if it would work to put together a simple open mic and, maybe perform my own original songs. He said it would be perfect. The guys at the music store fixed it up, and for $1,000, my musical career began. By the end of my sophomore year, I went back to Mr. Southwick, and I asked for another audition. Once again, he found my lowest notes. He found my highest notes. He had me sing different harmony parts, and without fail, had me sing some solo parts based on music alone. He had me go through the whole process all over again before I waited again. This time, I know it was a lot longer. He had to have been longer. I didn't have any nails left to chew by the end of it, and I'm pretty sure that uncomfortable chair could not get shuffled around anymore without damaging the floor underneath its legs. On a few occasions, I found myself talking to myself and going over what I would say when I was rejected again. You see, rejection was all I knew. I often wondered why I kept trying. I think the answer was I didn't really have a plan B. I knew what I was. And even though others didn't see it yet, I had a vision of who I wanted to become. It was instilled in my head. Nobody believed in me completely. but I didn't really know I needed anyone to believe in me. I thought I could just figure it out somehow. It was just persistence that kept me driven. I didn't need to have it figured out. I just needed to keep doing things so that I could adapt. Mr. Southwick came back into the room after what felt like an eternity of what must have been writing my eulogy, and sat down next to me. He asked what I'd been up to the last year since I wasn't in choir and hadn't really had the chance to reconnect. I was a busy high school student, had a lot of classes, you know. I told him about trying to make a business that I hadn't really thought through yet, but I knew I wanted to create something cool and my own. He said, well, you've obviously been doing some singing. And he shook my hand and closed with, welcome to concert choir. You see, I could have given up long before that. I could have just stayed the normal class, just like many others. Nobody would have thought less of me or thought I was wrong to give up. They would have said, at least you tried, and just been done with it. Another chapter closed, and closure found. Well, my junior year in high school wasn't much less chaotic. I still wasn't a natural singer, and as I was sitting in that classroom, I felt beneath all of them. Like I wasn't worthy of the class, because they were so gifted and I was not. I had to work twice as hard to do the same things that came natural to them. The idea of singing solo wasn't on my agenda. In fact, when prodded to try out for a solo, I pushed it off and said no thank you, and sometimes would suggest someone who I thought would be better. I remember the looks I'd get when I fell flat on a note, or when I'd lose tone because I had this natural country phrasing that was normal to me. I remember being told it was my fault by small groups when we didn't win in competitions. I remember questioning why he even let me in the class in the first place. This was all resolved for me the first parent-teacher conferences. My parents were going table to table talking to each teacher, and finally came to Mr. Southwick. Of course, my dad and him had to reminisce. It was a while, but Mr. Southwick said to my dad, I have never met someone who wanted to sing more than your son, and he's done the work to prove it. It's strange how I can feel shivers when I kind of get emotional just thinking about that moment now. Maybe it wouldn't mean much to you as a reader or someone watching this video if you're watching the video. Knowing where I'm at now and what I've been through and what I do at this point, but you have to understand, at that time, I didn't think I'd ever have someone speak of me as a singer in that way. Later on that same year, all the choirs performed for this pop